y'all, my name is Ella Couch and I'm from the Bay Area, California, and this is my story. So growing up, my parents were both pastors. They were youth pastors and the worship pastors. So church was basically my second home. I also went to preschool at my church, and it was great to see my dad around school. But I always grew up in a Christian home, and my parents just straight out of the womb taught me the love of Christ and what it really means to be a Christian from such a young age. And I feel like that is such a blessing because not a lot of people get to say that about their childhood. But me and my siblings, we get to say that we grew up in a Christian household with the most amazing parents, and they're probably watching right now, so I love you, Mom and Dad. But I'm just super, super thankful for the parents that God is granting me with, and to be able to call them just my favorite people because they have, I don't know, made me who I am and really shown me what it's like to be a Christian from the get-go. And growing up in church was just, I don't know, it was just the most amazing thing because at school, like when going to elementary school, it was all secular, but I got to tell people from such a young age, like, you should come to church with me. Like, on Sundays, it's not just sitting in a wooden bench all uncomfortable and listening to some old guy talk. It's not that at all. It's actually just, you get to, and especially in kids, you get to play games, you get to watch cool videos, sometimes when Jesus is a Lego, and you get to like memorize verses for fun and eat snacks, especially goldfish. And growing up in church was such an amazing thing, and I'm super thankful to be a pastor's kid, and just to say that my childhood was blessed by God and my parents. So since I grew up in church, obviously my parents, they were my ride, so I wasn't forced to go to church, but they brought me to church with them. And my turning point for when I really decided to become a Christian for myself was probably when we were church hopping, and my dad decided to step away from his youth pastor and worship pastor position at a church that I loved for so long. I grew up there, and he was just the best person to watch be in ministry, and the Lord called him away, called both my parents away with no next step. It was literally a walk of faith. And we church hopped for a few years, and then we went to this one church, and our parents were drawn to it because of their kids ministry and their youth ministry. So I entered into that church when I was in 3rd grade. My sister was in 5th and my brother was in 2nd. And then we kind of grew up and we entered into the youth group age. And that is when I really learned what it's like to be a child of God and what that truly means. And I remember the first time going into this youth group was a dodgeball night. And I was so intimidated by how tall and intimidating everybody was. But I was just this little 12-year-old, and I was just in awe of, like, all of these people love God so much and are not afraid to talk about him just so openly when we're throwing and chucking balls at each other. And then I started to go more consistently with my sister and my brother. And I remember very vividly the first time watching everyone worship in our own youth group setting. And everyone was raising their hands and like not doing choreographed dance moves like we did in kids ministry, and I thought that was so weird, but it was also so beautiful because everyone was worshiping in their own way. And I still remember to this day, the first time that I ever raised my hand in worship, I was like 12 or 13, and I was so scared. I was like watching everybody around me like, are they gonna see me raise my hand to the Lord for the first time? But I did it, and that night I went home and I told my parents, I was like, I raised my hand to God for the first time, and they were like, yay, Ella! And then I go to my journal and I literally draw a little hand, and I said, I worship God for the first time with my own hand today. And that was just such a turning point because I really knew what it meant to worship God for myself, not for anyone else's doing, but my own, and having my own relationship with him, not for a performative aspect or because the teacher told us to do this certain dance move or sing this song, but because the worship was so genuine. And that was the first time I joined a worship team. I really knew what it was like to, I don't know, be a friend to other people. And also that in that youth group and in that time of my life was when I received my calling from the Lord to become a kids pastor at 12 years old, which is so unheard of, but I've been following that path ever since I was 12, which is like, oh my gosh, 9 years ago now. But youth group was something that really taught me how to be a Christian, and that was when I really decided to do it for myself, and not because my parents were pastors or because they drove us to church or because anyone else wanted me to, but it was because I was learning about God for myself and not for anybody else. So yeah, and then Yeah, so leading up to high school was like, I got involved in theater, which is something that I'm super thankful for, and I still love to do it. But COVID was my least favorite thing in the world, but so much came out of it looking back at it now. But starting freshman year, 2019 to 2020, that was when anxiety really kicked in. My biggest trigger was school shootings because it was just swarmed around me by media and by movies coming out about mass shootings and school shootings and gun violence and all that good stuff. But it's just something that was implanted in me when we started doing drills. And they were like, okay, you gotta lock the doors, stay quiet. We have police coming around and they're gonna knock on the door, bang on the door, try to get it open, like acting like someone who was a shooter. And that was something that became a reality for me, and it really terrified me because I was like, what if this happens to me, and what if one day I don't get to come home and my parents have to watch on the news that I was not here anymore? And that was my biggest fear, and it completely consumed me. And it was mostly, like, it started my freshman year when I was 14, and then COVID hit, and I was relieved but disappointed because I was so involved in theater and I was in this musical, and then it was canceled, and then at the same time I was like, wait, now I'm safe and I don't have to go to school anymore, and I don't have this big target on my back. So COVID hit and school was canceled, 2020, and into 2021 was when my anxiety got really bad. I now had an excuse to never leave my home because of COVID and the virus that was going around, and then quarantine, and the curfew that we had and all that stuff. But my parents were like, Ellie, you gotta go on a walk or come with us to the grocery store, or I don't know, step out on the porch and get some oxygen from outside and not from your window. And I refused. I was so scared that if I left my front porch, that someone was going to grab me, someone was going to take me, something was going to happen to me. And I was also terrified for my family whenever they left the house, that something was going to happen to them. So quarantine just was like, ugh, it made everything so much worse. And my mom is a therapist, and she helped me through all of this. And I was diagnosed with agoraphobia, which is the fear of leaving your space, your comfort, and basically your home. And I was like, dang, I have anxiety that is now diagnosed, and it felt like I was just trapped in this identity that I wasn't supposed to live in, but I chose to live in it, which in my own doing, and I just completely forgot about God and His comfort and what He is doing in those dark times. Like, when I think about 2020 and 2021, the color gray just is over it, and it takes it over. But I had my first really big panic attack in 2020. My brother was the only one home. I couldn't breathe. I was shaking. I was running around the house. My brother was like, what is going on? I tried to call my parents, but they were working, and my sister, I don't even know where she was. And then I called my mentor, and she was like, okay, I want you to read this verse out loud. And I physically could not speak. I couldn't read because I was just bawling and shaking, and my words weren't coming out of my mouth. And I forget what the verse was, but she was like, Ella, breathe and read this verse, and I couldn't. I literally tried so hard, and I couldn't. And that was the first time that I ever really experienced a panic attack. And then it just progressively got worse, and I still didn't want to leave. But then 2021, the end of it, I think it was around second semester of my sophomore year, our school was opening back up, and they said, you can choose to stay at home or you could go back to school. And my parents were like, go to school. You are going to school. All three, me, my sister, and my brother. Our butts were kicked, and we went back to school. And it was way worse than freshman year, because now, I don't know, I was one of two students in a room with my teacher, and I was constantly looking at the door, hearing any footsteps, terrified that my life was going to end. And I was just taken aback by like any little noise. And at some point, our theater teacher had us do a project where we had to literally dissect a short film about a school shooting. And there was just so many reminders of this terrible reality that happens around the world. And I was just, yeah, it was really dark. And then junior year comes around. Things are getting better. Things are opening back up. Going back to church, the Lord kept reminding me that I am safe in His hands. That is something that He just really imprinted on my brain. And then I got into senior year. So sophomore, junior, and senior year, my grades were terrible because of all this anxiety. Any test I would take would create such a chaos in my brain. So my academics weren't great. My social activity wasn't great. My only safe place was my home and youth group, and that's pretty much it. And then senior year comes around, and the anxiety hit me day one of senior year. And I had a panic attack because someone pulled the fire drill. And I don't know why, but it put my brain into a spiral. And I had to go home early. And that was a routine that happened every week. I would be sent home from school like once every week because of a panic attack, because of I couldn't breathe or I couldn't focus, or the nurse literally knew the drill. Like, she would get a call that I was coming to her, and she'd be like, "Oh, is it Ella?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's me. I'm having another panic attack." And she tried to help me, but I wouldn't let her. I was just like, I wouldn't let anybody help me. And my mom tried to help me, and there were ways that really did help because she studies all the brain stuff. And then she asked me one day, she was like, "Do you want to be put on medication?" And I didn't really understand. I was like, dang, is there something really that wrong with me that I have to rely on pills? But that's not the case at all. It was just an outlet that I could have, like, that would help me, that could be prescribed to me. So my mom was like, "It's totally your decision if you want to be put on medication." And we scheduled an appointment with the doctor, and she evaluated me over and over and over again, and I was put under medication, and I would have to take a few pills every morning, and they did help. It was a type of antidepressant, and it would kind of switch those thoughts that would come, the intrusive thoughts that would come into my brain, off for a few hours. And it did really help with focusing in school, with my social battery, and talking to people, and just walking into class. It was a really great outlet that I had the opportunity to have for my anxiety. And then I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder after being prescribed into pills. And I had all these exercises I would do with my mom. But then the second semester of school, it was just like blow after blow after blow. And just certain situations would like knock me down and really take my self-esteem down. And I was also like trying to get a 504 and accommodations for test taking, because I also was like told I had test anxiety, which makes a lot of sense. And at the end of my senior year, I finally get to talk to someone on the board about getting a 504 when I'm about to graduate. So it wouldn't have helped at all, but I was like, okay, I can use it for college. And they bring me into a meeting. It's like a week before school gets out. God bless my school counselor. She was really gunning for me. But someone on the board said, okay, one of the first things he said was, "You have a learning disorder." And I was like, another thing that I have to deal with. Another part of my identity that is now taken down. So I had anxiety, I had agoraphobia, and I now have a learning disorder. So that made me feel like nothing. And I didn't appreciate those words. I went back to my mom and I cried. And it was just something that unmotivated me to go to college. But my parents were like, "I want you to apply to schools." And I was like, "No, I'm going to community college. I'm staying here. There's no way I'm moving anywhere 20 minutes away from you guys because this is my comfort zone. This is the only place I could find peace. But my dad was like, apply to Vanguard. And he bribed me with a trip to Disneyland, and he said, if we go to Disney, we can tour Vanguard. And I'm like, okay, like I guess we could go to Disney. So we go to Disney first, and then the next day we tour Vanguard. And I tried to hate it so much. And my dad asked me, he was like, so how'd you like it? And I was like, how did you like it? And he said, I want you to base it off of your preference and your thoughts. Like, I'm not going to give you any of my intentions and any of my perspectives until you make a decision. Good parenting right there. And then I was like, I don't like it. Like, people are rude when everyone was literally smiling at me, and I've never felt so loved. And then I was like, the campus is ugly. And I'm like, in my mind, I was like, I've never seen a more beautiful campus in my life, but I was just trying so hard to hate it. And then we have like a meeting with financial aid, and they had so many opportunities for me to come here financially. And I was just like, no, I'm not going. But my dad bought me a sweatshirt anyway, and I went home and I repped it, and people asked me, are you going? And I was like, no, I'm not going to Vanguard. It's a dumb school. And then I got in. Like, I got accepted to Vanguard, and I was like, wait, maybe I should go. Like, this could be a reality, because I had loved Vanguard since I was a kid. Like, I heard about it, and I even got like a little, Millie, she actually was at a conference in, I think it was 2021, at General Council, I think, and she gave me information about it, and she was one of my first impressions of Vanguard. So that's a full circle. But I was like, no, I'm not gonna go. But then I kept getting these like images from God of me walking around campus just with the big fat smile on my face. And I don't know, I just looked strong and not being weighed down by my anxiety and my insecurities and I don't know, all the lies that the enemy had implanted in my brain for years and years and years. So I said yes to Vanguard. I committed, which was hard because I didn't want to leave, but I was pushed by the Lord, pushed by my parents in the best way, and I'm very thankful for that. And then I come on campus, it's like day one, welcome week, and I have to say bye to my parents, which was so hard. And then I didn't have one anxious thought for about a month, and I was completely fine. I literally forgot to take my medication in the morning for the longest time, and I was just like, I don't know, I didn't have any intrusive thoughts, any panic attacks. I was just like enveloped in the Lord's comfort when I took a step of faith, took a leap of faith to move here, which is hours and hours and hours and miles away from my home. And then one day I decided to take my medication again. I was like, oh shoot, like I totally forgot about this. Maybe I should start taking them again. So I took it one day, and I had a really bad reaction to it because my body wasn't used to it anymore. It wasn't part of my routine anymore. I felt super faint. I couldn't walk straight. I felt like I was gonna barf. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, dang, what happened? And I prayed about it, and the Lord was like, why did you take those again when I already healed you? I already fully took the anxiety away from your brain. And I was just like, whoa, because that is something that I never thought would happen to me, because for so long I claimed to be an anxious person. I had this disorder looming over my head for so long, and I let it take my identity away from me, and I forgot who I was. I forgot that I was a child of God. I forgot that I was his daughter, and I forgot that I was a Christian. I forgot that I was supposed to be following God, and all I said about myself was, I'm anxious. I'm the most anxious person ever. I'm the most insecure person ever. But the Lord stripped those lies away from me in an instant when I asked him what happened. And so I stopped taking the medication because he told me I didn't need it anymore because he already fully healed me. And that medication helped me in an immense way for just a season, but I didn't need it anymore because he took all of my anxiety away. And that is just something that I look back on, and it's crazy because I hear about all these miracles and I read about all these miracles in the Bible and I see them in other people's lives, but I never really thought that it would happen to me. I never thought that a miracle would ever happen in my heart, in my brain, in my body, but it did. And if you were to look at me a few years ago, I would be a completely different person. I probably wouldn't make eye contact. I would probably think that you had something in your pocket to hurt me. I would think about the most insane things, and now I don't have anxiety. I'm free from agoraphobia. I'm free from generalized anxiety disorder. I'm free from a learning disorder. And it's just the best thing to say because it's all because of the Lord and all because of what he's done for me. And that doesn't mean that all my problems go away just because of a miracle, but that means that I now have a realization of who I can rely on when I have struggles. And that is my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And he is the most important thing to me in my life. And I can testify to that time and time and time again. And that is just one instance of what he's done for me in my life. He has touched me in so many ways. He's provided for me by coming here just because I said yes to something that I didn't want to. But the Lord said, Ella, I have something for you. You just need to realize that you need to take it. You don't know what it is, but you need to take it. Like, you know that picture of a little girl holding on to this little teddy bear, and Jesus says, give it to me. And she says, no, but I love it. But he has a way better and a way bigger teddy bear behind him. And she doesn't want to let go of the one she has. But Jesus has something so much better for her right behind him. All she has to do is let go. And that is just something that I had to do. I had to let go of my comfort zone. I had to let go of my insecurities. I had to let go of my anxiety. And it wasn't something that could just be like taken from me. I had to let go of it. And I had to realize that by saying yes to God ultimately. And now I follow him every single day. I'm still obviously an imperfect person. I have insecurities, and time, like every so often, I have anxious thoughts. But now I learned how to handle them, and just what a blessing it is to be here and have amazing people around me that aren't afraid to say the Lord's name. And I get to go to class and read my Bible, and we get to pray for each other, and that is just the biggest blessing. And yeah, I now know what the big teddy bear looks like because I had to let go of my old one. But glory be to God, and it's all for him, and I'm so thankful for him. So